Hi everyone.
Hi guys.
So like you saw in our previous video, our promo video, my name is Ayanda, also known as Yaya.
And I am Thule, just known as Thule.
Okay. So what are we going to be talking about today?
So today we are looking into that little voice inside that some of us can't distinguish or some of us are familiar with, but it's called God's voice, right? So how do we know that we're hearing from God? Is it indeed Him or us, or I don't know, some voices inside our heads? How do we distinguish? I mean, friend, have you had an encounter with hearing God's voice?
I think like that question is such a trick question. Like a lot of like this one friend of mine once asked me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I heard God say this and that and that. And my friend was like, was it like an audible voice? Did you really hear God? Like, what, are you lying? Like, what?
I mean, how did you know? How did you know that it was or it wasn't Him?
So it wasn't an audible voice. It was just like a stillness inside of me. It's not something that I heard audibly, but it's something that I guess communicated to my spirit in a way that my mind understood, in a way that gave me peace. I think for me, I verified that it was God's voice because a lot of the times my own thoughts don't always bring me peace, you know. But whenever I get a thought or a message that is founded and just drenched in peace, it's always a good signal for me to know that I'm hearing from God. I don't know about you.
To say, well, I've had an encounter with hearing from God, and most often it would be like someone would speak to me, and I would know that is certainly that something was in my spirit, or it was something that I was struggling with, right? So I'd have like questions about it, and someone would speak about it, and it would almost be an automatic answer. So because I don't hear from God directly, like I wouldn't hear Him like speak to me like my dad or in a familiar voice, but because He's speaking through this person, I would actually understand that this probably is God trying to talk to me, or I'd be reading something and that thing would be aligned to something that I was questioning.
Or that you were praying for.
Right. So, or even like things like sometimes you're walking and you just experience an answer through nature.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, you're driving and you just look at the beautiful sun and you just probably at that point kind of have some peace in you about something. And suddenly there's just like an adornment about maybe things will be alright. Let's say you were encountering some trouble in your life and you think about when you're ever gonna have peace, right? And so as you are walking and you experience some breeze, or you look at the birds and you think, why am I worried? Because God has catered for them, and that's probably a reason why you shouldn't worry, because He'd also cater for you. Because He actually says that you shouldn't worry about anything.
Like if the birds don't have to worry about their own food, but they're still alive.
Absolutely.
Then how much more for you? So friend, like, how would you like, if someone comes up to you, right, and they're like, how do I hear God's voice? Like you don't know anything about them. They just came up to you and they're like, listen, I heard about this God. I think I kind of like Him, but I want to know more about Him and I don't know how to communicate with Him. Well, what happens?
You need to spend a lot of time in meditation and prayer. That is the only way you are going to be able to hear Him. And
is that hearing Him in what way? Like in your spirit? Because like you said, there's different ways of hearing God.
In your spirit.
Like there's different ways.
In different situations, you may not hear Him like audibly, isn't like a loud voice, but for you to be able to receive the message, your spirit needs to be fertile enough to be able to have God's voice lend into your spirit. And for that to happen, you need to be able to have a soul that is able to receive that, right?
Yeah.
So as you were saying that, for instance, if you were having trouble about how do I hear Him though, if you could just probably sit in silence and just listen to.
But friend, like, I remember like a couple of years ago, I think it was like back when Twitter just came out. I don't know what year that was. Like by my 2013,
Yes,
2014 vibes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I remember I used to love social media so much back then. And when Twitter came out and like your Instagrams and stuff were like out, I spent a lot of my time on those social media platforms. And to such an extent, especially Twitter, like I just love like scrolling down my timeline all the time.
Yeah.
And there was just all this information, just like a lot of words, a lot of funny pictures, a lot of random pictures, like selfies, like I just saw like a lot of content. And I remember when I tried doing what we're speaking about now, like how you said, like just like meditate and just kind of position yourself to hear God's voice. I remember trying to do that, right, back then. I'm like, okay, cool, I'ma just try and just listen to God. And I remember like closing my eyes and like trying to like meditate. But everything, literally from social media, from everywhere, like all I could just see is my timeline. All I could just see is like all these words just like flooding, or all these pictures. Like, so what I'm trying to say is, like, your mind already has so much content inside it.
Yeah.
So how do you now separate and just remove all that content to create like a blank space for God to speak to you? Like, how do you brush off the distractions, like when you're trying to listen to God?
Well, it's actually right there to brush them off. I mean, I'm not saying that you suddenly now close yourself off from the world and you're not talking to people and you're not interacting with them or interfacing with them.
Yeah.
The point is, imagine trying to listen to the TV while the radio is on, and while someone else is talking to you and you're on your phone with someone, you cannot have a centered attention on one thing, because everything is engaged, everything is on, is loud. So you need to have your mind and your soul centered around hearing his voice.
Yeah.
And as we say that, I'm just reminded how when you are expecting a response, you actually do get it. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
But sometimes there's a lot going on around us, and when everything else is just in chaos and in members, you don't know where to start. So I would say, if you are constantly on social media, you're definitely going to have it hard trying to hear a clearer voice.
Yeah.
Because you need clarity to hear God.
Yeah.
You need silence, yes, but it shouldn't be still all the time.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, it's not always that you should sit in a quiet room.
Yeah.
And there's no radio.
That does not
sound.
work for me. Like, I don't hear God like that. I literally hear God like all the time. Like, sometimes I'll be like at the gym and God is just out here.
Yeah.
Or I'll be in my car and God is out here. But friend, I want us to also talk about some of the things that block us from hearing God. Like, what are some of the things? Because sometimes we want to hear from God,
Yeah.
But sometimes there's just so much happening inside of our hearts and our minds and just like our really busy lives that it becomes difficult to, like, because God's presence is always there.
Yes.
But sometimes it becomes difficult to be conscious of God's presence, So, like, what are some of the things that block us from hearing God's voice?
I think closing up. We need to remain open to receiving not just his message, but also immersing ourselves in his presence.
Okay.
When you're open to receiving his presence and whatever that comes with it, you open yourself up. And when you open yourself up, you encounter so many things. Sometimes you're holding on to too many things, hoarding those feelings, hoarding those experiences that God cannot come through and talk to you, because there's just so many walls.
So maybe even like pain, like painful things, like things that we've all went through that are just, I guess, in our subconscious and like in our like feelings still, like they're still in our emotions, but we haven't really dealt with them. And sometimes I've seen with myself, sometimes if I'm going through something really, really, really difficult, like how you said, I tend to close off.
Yeah.
Not only from God, but literally from like everybody and everything, from the TV, from the cushions, from the couch. I close everything.
Yeah.
But like that closing off and that holding on to pain, like sometimes it almost infects your heart.
Yeah.
Because like it just causes your heart to just become like a little icy and like a little cold. And that coldness, that hardened heart, I think sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult for God to get his message across through to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like life experiences contaminate our spirit.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
I mean,
yeah.
if you look at children, I mean, they're not called innocent for nothing, right? So they're born with like open souls, pure souls.
Yeah.
That is why you
extremely
could be
pure.
shouting, you could
What's
be
up with
screaming
it?
at a kid.
Yeah.
Then a minute later they come and they embrace you.
Yeah.
But our experiences, I mean, whether it be pain or suffering, whatever it is, they hinder us from being ourselves. In actual fact, we're not born to close up. We're born to open up.
But then now, how do you open up? Because I mean, like that means like now you gotta be vulnerable.
Absolutely. That's how you remain.
That is not fun.
You remain close to God when you're vulnerable.
Yeah, that's true.
You remain close to encountering, like authentic feelings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like when you are in that space, right, it is actually so much easier for you to either hear God through other people or through God, through God's creation. In fact, let me just put it like that, right?
Yeah.
But so for me, those are the things that could hinder people or ourselves from hearing God.
Yeah.
And the hardened heart for me is like the one that sticks out.
Yeah.
When our heart is so hardened, and sometimes when we are in that space, we are fearful.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are angry. Sometimes we are bitter. But I think we actually unable to be ourselves when
we strip ourselves off of those things.
Yeah, when we closed out.
Yeah. I wanted to say something, but I can't remember what it is now. What about disobedience? Like and I think this happens for a lot of people that are Christians already. Because sometimes it's like this. Like God will tell you, babes, don't do that thing.
Girl, listen.
Honey, that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But then honey is like, nah.
I think when you're trying to control something, if you're trying to control the outcome of something, even though there is a word, right, from the beginning, like let's say someone warns you about that thing, or even your spirit doesn't agree with it, but you're just not finding peace with that situation.
Yeah.
Or that outcome, but you are trying to control it so that at the end you can have your way. And I don't know how it works for like non-Christians, but I think for Christians most of the time, when you know that, well, listen, I can plan, but at the end of the day, like God seals the deal.
Yeah.
You kind of have peace trying to surrender your will.
Yeah.
But if you then continue doing whatever that you need to do, you know that whatever that's going to come at the end of that outcome is definitely not what God wants for you.
Yeah.
So you're trying to control, you're trying to manipulate, you're trying to basically twist God's hand to suit what you want as an outcome.
But sometimes the things that God says He wants for you, like, to be very honest, I get it. And I've just come to trust that if God says don't do that, I must just not do it.
Yeah.
But it took a long time for me to get to that point, because I was like, you're literally always ruining my fun. Like, I was having a lot of fun. It was fun for me.
So, yeah, you were saying you've been having a lot of fun.
And God is just like, that's not the one for you. So I think sometimes what happens is, like, God does speak to us, but sometimes we have a disobedient heart to what He says. Like, we resist what He says, or sometimes we think we know better, so we're self-righteous on our own standards. But I remember, like we had this conversation the other day. There's this guy, his name is John Bevere, right? He's a pastor.
Yeah.
And he has this whole series. It's called Killing Kryptonite. in the series, he was speaking about the different stages that God speaks to his children, especially when he wants to protect you from something, or if he wants you to stop doing something. And like what he was saying was, the first thing is that he will convict you in the spirit. So like your spirit will know, that's not the right thing for me to do.
Yeah.
The second thing is, if you still don't listen after the spirit has been sent to you, and you're still not convicted, he'll send people like counsel, like friends. I remember this one time we were literally speaking about something, and I was like, God done sent you. I was like, you're the one that God sent. So he'll send the spirit to convict you. He'll send people to speak to you. And people can be anything, friends, pastors, whatever.
Yeah.
But one of the ways that God gets you to listen is by trials. And that's a difficult one. Like sometimes God will make you go through something just so that he can get your attention and say, I need you to listen to me, because at the rate that you're going, you're going to be facing more trials. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like actually that's a very good example to use when you are in the midst of trials, because at that point you have nothing else to do but just to stop and focus and say, what is God trying to say to me? And so often I know when we're going through trials, we often think, but God is trying to punish me, life is so hard. But there's actually a lesson there, right? There's like a tutorial of some sort trying to take you through like life's. In fact, it's trying to bridge the gap between where you are and where you need to be. But there's sort of like a character building that needs to take place, right? But you can't do that without a coach. But God is like in there with you saying, do this, do that, stop doing that, go there, don't turn left and right. But I actually really do think that when we're going through trials, that's like the best time to hear God. Because he's actually not saying, I'm abandoning you and you're
or even that he's punishing us.
No, absolutely not. He's actually saying, whatever it is that's happening right now, I need you to stop everything and just listen. And as you go through those trials or a trial, you realize at the end of it that actually, whoa, I turned out to be much better than I was when I came in, and I listened. I listened, and I think that's a really powerful thing to do when you are doing what God says you should do, and you realize that in fact what he was saying to you was the best thing that could ever happen at that point. So, I mean, in closing, friend, I just want to say, listen, when you're hearing God's voice, it's gonna come in different forms, in ways, in things. But the most important thing is that we remain receptive to listening to his voice, be it through those people. And secondly, that we allow ourselves to have our souls as fertile soil for God's word to grow, and for God's people. In fact, for God to use us in whatever situation that we may be in. So when we listen to God's voice, it allows us to be better people. In fact, it allows us to be what God has called us to be.
It does. I get you, friend, and I 100% agree with you. Also in closing, I just want to say, a lot of times, like, what tends to help is having like a specialized relationship with God, like knowing God as something. Like, for me, God is my father. For other people, God is a teacher. For other people, God is whatever special dynamic relationship that you have with God. That also helps with like the communication between you and God, because then he'll address you like someone that he's teaching if you see him as a teacher, or he'll address you like his daughter if you see him as a father. So also just identifying the kind of relationship that you have with God. Is it like do y'all like turn up? Are y'all friends? What's up?
Like, hey girl, hey, what you doing? But I mean, I think in essence it's something that is a journey that you take. You don't just arrive one day and that's it, you grow. And I think as you grow, it becomes more refined and more clearer to you.
Yeah.
We are different as people. Some people spend a lot of time reading, and it maybe just be, almost like a point of reference whenever you need God to answer, whenever you need God to speak to you about something. And you may have friends, you may have confidants, and sometimes God plants a seed into someone's spirit for you to receive. And sometimes it could just be through music,
Yeah.
You could be someone who listens to a lot of music, and just
God
on
is
that
there
day,
in the midst of a
God
verse.
gives you a song. Hey?
Exactly.
Right. So
Like, what's up?
But
in
I-
the midst of a song.
yeah, but I do think that it is so possible to hear Him.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next week.
See you next week, and bye.
Bye for now.
So you can't know God's voice if you don't know who God is. And so, like, this right here is who Jesus is right here. He has given it to you. He has laid it all out for you. And he has said, get to know me here so that you can know me here. Because when you know how I work, you know what I would say. And so when you get to know who Jesus is through the scriptures, you will start to hear things and see things aligned with the character of Jesus. And then you can say, I know who Jesus is. I know that voice. And you'll distinguish your voice from God's voice, even if it sounds like your voice, because it's a thought that you might never have had, or it's an idea or a decision you might never have